Hello, everyone, and welcome in the first episode of Blackbird's podcast. I'm just kind of really excited to say that. For some reason, I really didn't plan having a podcast, but when I crossed LifePlugin and the founder, Gautam Khetrapal, who is the guest today, I was just so inspired by them, and I was like, I need to chat with them. So, for that reason, I created my podcast. And now let's see if I manage to bring more amazing guests over here and have really, let's say, innovative conversations. Because there is something interesting about Gautam, and you're going to see soon why. But definitely something which distinguishes him and LifePlugin from all possible new age personal growth companies that I know of. So yeah, you will definitely be inspired by the conversation, which is based in education, modern education, which sounds strange or boring, but is really not, because Gautam has a way to introduce a touch of Disneyland in education and the transformational process in life. We're going to blend how can spirituality also find its place in education and the place of spirit in our intellect-driven world. So I'm so excited to welcome everyone who is listening, and let's tune in. Let's jump on board and see what Gautam has to tell us. All right. So, Gautam, thank you so much for joining this talk and this little podcast, first one on my channel. I'm really excited to have you here. And let me do a little bit of introduction for the whole 1 hour video or whatever time is going to take to everyone who is watching this. So, Gautam is the founder of LifePlugin, which is a very inspiring organization. I was super intrigued when I came across it. And one thing that especially triggered me was your emphasis on healthy social interaction. Just the way you guys value friendship, which I thought had a very authentic essence to it. And the differentiation that I spot between you and some other new age personal growth influencers, which nowadays is so many, is that you guys, you personally and the LifePlugin, you don't work so much on your social media presence, meaning on how you express yourself, right, while building an online reputation and following, but you rather focus on providing high quality content and building very authentic real life events. And when I was checking out the LifePlugin, I saw that you really strive to carefully design and intentionally craft the real life experiences, really aiming to be transformative on a deep level. And we're going to go more into that later on. I think it's going to be very interesting to talk a bit more about the background of your preparation of the event and how you design them and who's behind it. There are really some beautiful core values which speak real loud through the offer that you guys have. So you also believe in lifelong education that is intrinsically motivating and is an adventure in itself, which I think is a really beautiful way to put it also. And you say that this is what helps people create a successful and meaningful life. So to start, Gautam, I would really like if you talk a little bit about your past. What actually brought you to the place, to what you're doing right now? Because it's also beautiful. I saw it in TEDx, and I would love to have it a little bit here also summarized.
You're very kind. Thank you so much for welcoming me. I will actually take this video and show it as a benchmark for all the other people to introduce. That was really, really nice. Thank you so much. My upbringing is, I think, in a lot of ways, and the more time I spend, and the more I'm pulled towards spirituality deeper and deeper as years progress in my life, the more I realized that I was literally born to just do exactly what I'm doing. I was born in India, in a you know that's that story. But I grew up in a middle class family, and I was quite. I would say my early life was quite privileged, not financially privileged, but relationally privileged. Like I grew up always knowing who my neighbors are, always having people over. There was a small to large gathering at my place every single day for 365 days a year for first 18 years of my life. So that's the ecosystem system that I grew up in, right? And middle class families, especially in India, it's there's a lot of challenges that people face, and having that strong social connection and strong social support from very early on, even before I could comprehend. This is me looking back and having a 2020 in hindsight. But even when I was growing up, I was noticing that everybody was willingly supportive of each other, and whatever circumstances there were, because maybe they needed to support each other because they were not financially privileged. But what I
Mhm.
did learn is that this strong sense of interdependence, when you give without expectation, just out of love, and then you know at the same time the other person has your back. Like it's without question. Like if I have a problem now in Spain where I live, and I make a call to India saying, "Hey, I have a problem." Like today, there will be 50 people at the airport waiting to take the next flight if they get the
That's
visa.
so that's so powerful, man. That's so powerful.
Yeah. So for me, it started there. And then my dad is a philosopher. He's written 2 books on philosophy. My mom is a science teacher and a Reiki master healer. So she
Okay.
talks about energy healing from a scientific perspective. So that's the
Wow.
environment that I grew up in. So I think I was just being bred to go into the field that I'm in, and bringing philosophies from different thought leaders, which has been always encouraged in my family. I didn't have to do anything to earn that. That mindset was just given to me. Having conversations and adding value to each other in a way that is fun. Like I grew up every single day with the sound of laughter. Every single day. There's conversations, philosophy, laughter. Conversation, philosophy, laughter. And there's this always this space of joy and connection. So that's exactly I'm trying to replicate with the things that I get to do for Life Plugin. Because all I want, like with this quote unquote business, is that for it to fulfill me and the things that were meaningful to me, I want them to be intact. So a lot of it is coming from a very what's the most selfish is also the selfless perspective. To me, it's like I want to recreate that because it was so meaningful to me. And if every single person could get glimpses of those experiences that were meaningful, like this one, being surrounded in a loving, connected, oriented family, and at the same time, when I ventured out, I got supported and connected with my angels. Like these are this all my friends. My biggest mentors in this world are my friends, and my biggest mentees, some of them, are also my friends. And I use the word friends very carefully, and it's a sacred word to me. Right? Without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. So for me, and that's the philosophy that I try to live and that I try to offer to the world, that I believe is a unique and refreshing perspective on personal growth, where I believe that if every single person in this world has 3 to 5 what I call the elevating friends that can push each other to grow, that celebrate you as if that it's their own success, that you can be vulnerable with, but not just vulnerable, you can go wild and do unspeakable things that are only your secrets, and that you can be openly biased towards. We don't need more than 3 to 5 people, but we will not need a personal growth industry. We will not need an aggressive mental health campaigns around the world. So it's, to me, that's a philosophy that I don't see very much around me, and that's been massively transformational for me in my journey. Right? And then it pointed me, my upbringing, the philosophy that I grew up listening to, they pointed me in the right direction every step of the way. Right? Getting into personal growth and stumbling upon the idea of youth leadership, and then transformational industry from the US. I got a job in Mind Valley, and I was fascinated by them. All of those things have a very strong role to play in my life. But I think the essence comes from the relationships, the way the education was imparted to me, the focus on truth more than results, intention more than result, always. And I didn't have to do anything to have that. It's not my doing. It just was given to me as a privilege. So all I'm doing is to pay it forward. That's all. So that's more or less a brain fart on my upbringing.
Wow, that was so different than what I expected. The story that you just shared, like the things that I heard on when I was watching your TEDx talk, you were talking about different things. So this is something which is just it has more depth. Actually, it has even more depth, and it's really powerful. And it's so true what you're saying, that you don't see that nowadays anywhere. Everyone is so much about individualistic, your growth, and it's so, and build your following rather than create meaningful connections. And you really emphasize the mindset that you kind of was given to you, right? The mindset of having that, or social support, or valuing the social support and valuing the interactions. I think it's interesting that you pointed out that this is what was given to you. It's not something you learned. So you kind of seem to make your own obviously did deep reflection on what was it that was given to you, and then brought this to consciousness, and then kind of build upon that, right? And elaborate, grow, and evolve, and see what kind of shape it takes further on. So if this is something, the mindset that was given to you and was kind of a gift that you adopted from your family, so now you're trying to share this forward by emphasizing these values further on in the work that you're doing. And how else, what kind of shape are you giving it further? How are you developing that gift further on?
Yeah.
Also,
Well, your question also had many many things that I would love to unfold. It's a very good question. First of all, the reason why I said that they're given to me is because I think it's the simplicity on the other end of complex journey so far in my life, 32 years, is that when I grew up in India and when I wanted to leave, there was every single thing that I wanted to run away from. At that time, it wasn't something that I was grateful for. And when I was building LifePlugin, at the initial point, I didn't. I had these things in my being, in my subconscious, in who I was, but I wasn't conscious of them. And when I started LifePlugin, it was with a particular intention. The intention was, we can talk about it, but it wasn't as clear or as deep as it is now. Right?
yeah.
It's as I'm unfolding these things, as I'm facing challenges, as I'm receiving resistance, and the resources that come handy to me, I started becoming more and more conscious, because it's also it's occupational hazard for someone who's working in the transformational industry. Right? So I became more and more conscious of what I thought were my things that were holding me back were actually the biggest gifts that I should be carrying. And I think that
So
shift
amazing.
happened in multiple moments of transformation. So, and I think it's another philosophy that I have carried, which is from my family, is I'm genuinely a very grateful person. There's no marketing behind it. You just see me like I go for a walk, gratitude walk, looking like I'm talking to myself, and it's just reminding myself of all the amazing things that were just given to me. Because there's a lot of suffering also in my upbringing. My first job was full-time job was $100 a month, right? There isn't all this glamour and joyous upbringing. It's just one example that can give you an idea of where the journey began, right? But if I look back, it's like, that's where I came from. And the things that I learned there were the biggest gifts. And in those moments, they weren't that clear to me. Right. So as I'm bringing or building LifePlugin now, and the ideas what are getting more and more clear to me is there are certain things that added way too much value for me as a human being, right? In my journey, for me to be like most of the times extremely happy and having tears of gratitude most of the time. So there are certain experiences that I had that I was privileged, with, and it's a good feeling to have when I it's attributed to someone who I love, like my friends or my family members, my parents, my brother, my sister, right, my best friend, my wife, right. It's to me it's one of the most incredible things to do. Like one of the things that I love sharing on stage is how people in my life, they've added so much value to me. I think that's one of the most beautiful experiences I have. So for me, it's interesting to just attribute everything that is coming, the place it is coming from, and I'm putting more consciousness to it, and I'm looking at what are the things that can be replicable, that are more useful to a mass population. And this is where I combine the things that I think are meaningful, maybe just personally to me, that I just got lucky with, and then I look at the world, the things that are actually needed in the world, and that's the part of research that's a bit more scientific, that's going outwards and studying organizations that actually create a cult-like following, looking at the most crazy tribe-centric ecosystems, looking at what is the biggest pressing need underneath all that we see right now, and then trying to retrofit, or not retrofit, trying to fit and merge the two, the values and the unique gift that I've been given in a way, so using them is meaningful to me, and then at the same time trying to solve a problem or pay it forward to the world, because I do have immense gratitude for. I'm not supposed to be here. Nothing in my life makes sense for me to be here where I am. So that's a blessing. So I just want to pay it forward. Like all the things that I'm sharing, all the things that I have shared so far, they're all they're learned from other teachers, learned from mentors, learned from my friends, learned from books, podcasts. all of that, right? And then even when I read so many books or go to courses, attend seminars, what have you, right? I have so much gratitude. I want to give back, but I can't. So one of the, in a deep emotional moment when I received too much value, I made a promise to myself, and I kept that promise. Every time I'm learning something from a teacher or a book or a podcast or a seminar, I mentally note to myself, I know that I can't pay you back because you would not need me to, but I promise to pay it forward. Like not just by teaching it or speaking it, because that's not an effective way of teaching. And every parent knows this. Your kids don't do what you tell them to do; they do what you do. So the best way to pay it forward is to be the proof of every single thing that you want to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And this becomes like I'm putting traps for my own ego that, hey, if you want to teach this, you better be the living example of this. Right? Until then, you can't teach it. So I just put this limitation on myself until I see myself as the proof of the things, or within reason, as a proof of the things that I want to teach, want to bring out in the world. I shouldn't be teaching them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another philosophy that we bring with LifePlugin. So every single teacher that you will see come on that stage is a living, breathing, walking, talking proof of every single thing that they're about to open their mouth on. Because that's interesting.
Yes. Yes. So I would connect this with the wheel of modern education that you presented, because you talk about the three steps, right? First one is find your tribe, and then deep immersions, and then in the latest version you put be in service, or how was it?
Serve your cause.
Serve your cause. So
Mm.
you said, first of all, I think it's a really powerful shift of the mindset to, because very often people have these doubts, right? Even me myself, I experienced many times the doubt of, I don't know, I'm not good enough to share, I'm not good enough to do this or good enough to do that or whatever, right? Whatever I want to do, there can be a not good enough behind. So I think it's so powerful to shift into understanding of the gratitude for the things that I did have and did receive and did contribute to me, and that out of this gratitude feel that push to serve.
Mm.
So I want you to explain a little bit how you apply this wheel of modern education, how you connect it with what you just explained. So to be serving your cause, which in your words is basically to become that living example, right? Of the things that you've been learning, basically, of all of the conferences, all of the teachers, all of the mentors. So to become that living example, that's the way that you serve your cause, right?
Let me, yeah. So there's two TEDx talks that you're both you're adding. One is the Wheel of Modern Education, which is actually the thing that put me on the map. That is about how can you drive your own education in the 21st century, right?
Mm-hmm.
How what Because the premise behind that was that we've been beating this dead horse for like 15 years now, that hey, our education system is outdated, hey, it's terrible, hey, it's horrible, right? It's industrialized model to put you in like boxes, like for your
Mm-hmm.
industry work. We keep talking about it, but we don't talk about the alternative. I had never heard someone talk about, okay, so what is the solution? What is, and not, it's not find your passion, it's not follow your heart. God, that could be a terrible advice for a young person actually. We
Mm.
can talk about that later. But
Yeah, please.
if the if the education system is outdated, what is the system for my education in the 21st century? And so that was the wheel of modern education. What you were just speaking about was the model that I gave in my recent TEDx talk was currency of belonging, which is
Mm-hmm.
where the element of tribes and deep immersive experiences are common. And then the
Mm-hmm.
third one is serving your cause, something that is bigger than you, something that you're
Mm-hmm.
humble to, right? Something that it's like, to me, the cause for me, the cause for LifePlugin is to inspire friendships in the context of growth. That's it. I mean, like, I want to be the best transformational education company, even though I'm very proud of the work that we produce, and you can see it in the testimonials, right? Not the testimonials after the event, but the testimonials are 6 months after someone attended an event. Those are the ones which are meaningful to me, right? So there's a lot of value there. But what I'm really interested in, right, the cause for me is to inspire friendships in the context of growth. And I think you mentioned that in the notes that you sent me before. The idea of in personal growth is bizarre to me, and it's getting more and more bizarre. I was
Mm.
inspired by it in the beginning, right? Because I came from an ecosystem which is deeply connected, right, and deeply interdependent, but very little freedom. So I was inspired by the idea of freedom, the idea of personal success, right? So there's two ends of the spectrum. One is crazily interdependent, and the other one is highly independent. And I think
Mm-hmm.
in both places, there's no freedom. Here, there's absolute loneliness, and this is where we are. The pendulum has shifted from here to here. But the
Mm-hmm.
beauty is when there's tension between both. Right? There's the idea of the drive to grow, the drive to expand, and at the same time recognizing our interdependent nature. Right? So to me, what I'm looking for is to inspire friendships in the context of growth. So what we do is we create context of growth. We create transformational experiences, whether it's for 300 people or 1,000 people or 10 people, or whether it's virtual rooms. We create transformational experiences that drive transformation, but that just sets the backdrop. And you will notice if you go to a conference or an event, whatever the theme of the event is, that is the backdrop. And the relationships that you form there, because the context was set, whatever the context was, that context remains in that relationship if you take that relationship forward outside. So what, and when you meet someone genuinely at a personal growth event, the kind of conversation after the event that you can have with that person is very easy around personal growth, right? Around
Yeah,
transformation, which is not the
totally.
normal case from your friends from school or from college, right? Because they were drinking buddies or they were doing other things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for me, in my university time itself, I got introduced into an ecosystem that spoke about growth, that spoke about leadership. So from very early on, I got introduced to the idea where my friendships were being formed in the context of growth. And I think that was the most meaningful thing. My co-founder, the guy who does all our video recording, the guy who does our finances, accounting, a lot of our speakers, all of these people I met 13 years ago in that organization because
Mind
we
Valley or no,
in
which one? Oh,
ISEC.
really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
a lot of my business partners from there, a lot of our employees are from there, a lot of our speakers from there. Half of Mind Valley, by the way, is from there, including Vision.
Wow.
So that organization is really, really powerful, and you can see the DNA being expressed in different shapes and form in both Mind Valley and LifePlugin, right? So it comes from there, and to me, capturing that and offering that to the world is beautiful, because we can't make people form friendships. You can't engineer it, but you can inspire it, right? And we inspire it by setting the backdrop, and then there's event programming that allows different meaningful connections to form. But at the same time, you need to live it, right? So the events that we go to, my closest friends are there. The first speech in Life Like in Summit is, guys, we may not be able to hang out together throughout the whole event because I'm here to hang out with these guys. That's how actually LifePlugin started. That's the truth. It's on Facebook. How LifePlugin started was with a Facebook Live, and my intention was to bring my friends together to talk about personal growth. Right. So
Oh,
I showed that Facebook Live, and I showed the pictures of the guys that I hung out with after closing party, red eyes, 8 a.m. in the morning, partied for 8 hours, and just talking, having a gratitude circle. And I show them, these are my guys. So you might see me hanging out with them because at a seminar, especially when you're the main speaker, there's a lot of, everybody wants to be with you. But you set
yeah.
context, uh, I have my 3 to 5 bunch of 10 people who come from around the world so that we can meet. The idea is not for you to be friends with me, but find your own 3 to 5 groups of people that you can have that relationship with. And when you do that, people actually find that. That's the craziest part. People started finding their own meaningful relationship. People have found their best friend, which is a concept that doesn't exist in our generation.
Hmm.
Within Life Flagging community, they're business partners, they've fallen in love with each other, they've gone for traveling with each other, and all of those things are happening because we just set the context, right? And set the context and the examples for them to model after. I mean, you give
Could
them.
you elaborate? Could you elaborate the context? Because
Mhm.
I think it would really fit to what I'm really interested now when you just to give a bit more depth on how do you design that? How do you design the events? What's the team behind the people? How do you put this together?
It's simple. It's the idea of uh, the goal being living growth as a lifestyle rather than looking at it as a quick fix.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Simple.
Perfect.
Everything that fits that idea, everything that is long-term transformation and that adds value to you and every single person you touch are the things that you learn at the event. Right? So the context is basically who's the speaker, what's the session happening, what are the experiences that are happening, what are the exercises that are happening. Right? So whether you're learning about subconscious programming or learning about how to be authentic, or having a deep transformational breath session, or having an ice bath, or working on fire. All of these are different transformational activities, or biohacking, or spirituality. Right? These are all the subjects that we would teach. What they do is, you're not just listening to the person in front of you or having that experience. The person in front of you is important, but also the person sitting to your left and to your right. Right. So most of the, I would say 50 to 60% of our events are experiential, where you're sitting in the driving seat of your transformation. Right. So
Mhm.
you come there and you're an active participant in you, in unfolding your own transformation. What that requires is for you to interact with different people in a meaningful way. And the topic of interaction is growth. Right. So what I believe, if any two people can have really deep, meaningful relationships, and also fun relationships, if we can engineer an environment where people are comfortable without their masks
Yeah.
momentarily, and they're accepting of the other person also without their mask, and that common understanding is set. Right. So
How
when
do
you,
you set that?
huh?
How do you provide for that? How do you support that
Mm.
common understanding?
You don't say it. One thing is to live it. The other thing is to inspire through stories of
Uh-huh.
how those things are happening. So when we would start, and when we would teach at our event, the opening keynote is about how that was lived through in the past summits. So what are the expectations for you guys to have?
Mm.
And so that sets the context. Stories set the
Yeah.
context. The kind of speakers that actually come there, not the topics. Topics can be anything. But if the people who are there are living through those experiences, like the highest rated session uh, at the last three summits consecutively that we did was a session on subconscious programming. Not because I spoke there, but because that was also the session that I was the most afraid of, and I still am every single time I talk about it, because it talks about the most vulnerable and the stories that involve a lot of shame and guilt that I don't want to look at myself. And so I share them only in that closed private room, and there's no recording happening at the time for the
Mm.
participant. For me, it is, right. And when I share that in that sense of safety, it also gives permission to other people to look at themselves as,
Yes.
imperfect people. Right? And there's no marketing or facade behind this. When I'm saying it, it without my preparation, it would bring me to point of tears, even though I know what I want to say
Yeah.
with the stories, and because it still touches a deeper core within me, and it shines through. And it's the same with other participants. So it's nobody floating above you and giving you information from that place. But yes, we
Mm.
did we did go above and beyond in learning these principles. So there's this element of training there. At the same time, the element of showing things as they are rather than just the perfection. It's
That's
not
so
this is what you
amazing.
do, but this is what I lived through. And from my experience, it may give you permission to look within comfortably as well. So things like that. And then there are experiences, things that shock you, like taking 150 Indians for the first time in their life, getting them into a swimming costume, which is unreal for them, in
Uh-huh.
Himalayas, and making them jump in a pool of ice. The amount of crazy emotion that they're experiencing, they can't even process it. They
Yeah,
become
yeah.
all the guards that you're holding, like, oh, I'm this, I make this much money, this is what I do, all the labels that I stick on myself, all of them, they just immediately just fall off. And you're literally every 100, all one of those 150 people are just 6-year-old children. That's what it means to be comfortable without your mask. So some experiences force that mask away from you in a way that brings you joy and laughter, and you don't know what to do with those emotions. And some are a bit more deeper, more personal, more vulnerable. And but the so it's a very good question for me to articulate the answer for. But yeah, this is what
No,
it is.
it's so perfect. I'm so happy to listen to this. Really, it's like, wow, this kind of messages is what have to be spread it across. Um, they are like so subtly filled with with juice, with like the true work, like the actual work and the actual a lot of also thinking process behind how to really prepare um, this kind of really the transformative experiences, right? Not just gathering of information nowadays. Well, at least I personally, and I know a lot of people around me, my boyfriend for example, he also has a personal growth online academy, right? And I can observe how they go through, and they're also falling through those traps. Like you have to be so continually self honest to yourself, that you catch yourself when you're falling into the traps which are so magnetizing of this, as you said, personal growth industry. It's really becoming, it's going off road like heavily because of all of this information gathering and just like inflating the consciousness, as Jung said. Basically, he said like, so much of in when you're gathering so much information and you think, you know, you inflate your consciousness. You don't really and you don't really step into the true experience, basically. So it's that thinking that, you know, which disconnects us from actual transformation. And the fact that you said that the people who are there, I think this is also so important. It's like the energy, right, that is established. It's not so much, oh, the name is there, that name is there, that because right now many people I know, they would go to events because of they are popular, or they are, you know, the big name is there and I'm going to go there because cool people are going to be there or whatever. And this is so disconnecting us again from this idea of being in touch with your soul, or being able to have a deep immersion. If you go somewhere that you go because it's popular, because it's cool, because it's whatever, the thing that you think you should do, you cannot have a deep immersion, right? It needs to be that.
Would pause there though. There's two things there, right? So the reason why that happens is because the basic influence principle that influences perception of people, right? It influences perception. That could be good. It's a powerful tool, and it can be a damaging tool as well. So I know there's a lot of really big celebrity people who are really living proof of every single thing that they teach. One of them is Jack Canfield, the guy who wrote the Chicken Soup for the book series, Chicken Soup for the book series. Right? So there are Vision is another example. Right? He's a big celebrity, but a worthy big celebrity. So when people go there, there's two things there, three things. First is that there is some truth to it, and when you know their Instagram following is a reflection of the depth to which they teach, right? That's beautiful. Then you follow them anywhere, and that's interesting. And LifePlugin will also bring them. LifePlugin has brought, and they will continue to bring those kind of people as well, right? And this is a marketing principle that also for us to not forget. If we are trying to bring light to the other people, we need to know the tools to reach out to as many people as possible. Right? I learned. I was head of marketing for Mind Valley for like 2 years.
Really? Wow.
Right?
Okay.
So I know how much.
Well done. By the way.
And Vishen taught me. He was my mentor in that as well. But Vishen is a genius marketer.
Yeah.
So it is a skill to have, and not just put it on the side saying, people go there for like the Instagram following and they don't really have a deep immersion. It's very likely that they do, for sure. But the quality of deep immersion that I'm interested in is that when you go attend a Tony Robbins seminar, freaking powerful seminar, even virtually, that guy has abilities that can make you feel things just through a computer screen. Really powerful. But you don't care about the people that are around you as much, right? It's a stage to audience relationship, and it's beautiful. But what I'm interested in is the whole ecosystem to collectively grow, and different people can keep on coming in, and LifePlugin becomes a playground for growth. Yeah, there'll be big celebrity players coming in, and then teaching, coaching, playing together, right? But that playground is important. When it does become a problem, is in our current generation, where your following is more important, and that goes back to what you mentioned in the introduction, that LifePlugin is not focusing on social media following as much as real experiences. It's not that it's not important, or
Exactly.
we are genuine people, we just want to not put it out there. It was just more profitable to focus on the product first and following after, I think. But that's a long-term game, because right now, and it's not anybody's fault, Instagram has created this influence culture. You go there, and then what do you have? It's social proof, it's called. One of the six, there's this book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. It's the holy Bible for any person who wants to do anything related to marketing or life. It's the first book that if you don't read it, it's like you don't understand how to influence perception. And it's a really powerful tool. One of them is social proof. When you see social proof, your attention goes there and start seeing, you get influenced by the perception there. What social media has done is you can buy followers. You can focus on just creating that following and look how big I am, look how big I am, look how big I am. And the higher the number, people think I'm bigger, and then I can get more sponsorships and all of that stuff. It um, I don't think I could even do it like that, because it was just me, focusing on too much me. I
Yeah.
thought it was becoming a bit uncomfortable for me. And at the same time, it's just not valuable. I know people who've had 150,000 plus following, and they try to sell a product online that they created. And I'm no names, right? But they would try to sell something worth whatever price. And out of 160,000 followers, they'll get like $5,000 of revenue, let's say, more or less,
Mm-hmm.
on the less side, actually. And then we have 584 customers that we genuinely wanted to have a relationship with. Literally, we did a 10 people event after COVID. We sent one email, 584 people. The event was sold out, $24,000. It's just more profitable to just focus on product and genuine relationship building once we bring these things into perspective, right? Doesn't mean we don't need to increase the following. We do. Actually, I would love to. It's not that I'm averse to it, right? But the first focus is this, because now
Mm-hmm.
what I've done, what I've not, my team collectively, what we've done is in 3 years, about 50% of our customers come back every 6 months at our events, and they bring a friend. And that's a snowball that in 3 years later is, we wouldn't know how to handle it in the most positive way.
Hmm.
Now once we set that motion in, we know what the cycle is, we know what to deliver, because we were still figuring that piece out, right? What the product is 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Now once that cycle is in motion, then we say, okay, how do we scale? But the first part is to nail what you're giving to the world. And what is missing to me is the start. Let's start with social media. Let me just start the, hey, I'm a coach, this is what I teach, and I start giving advice. I start giving advice, and
Yeah.
value for some people, but it's not the kind of people that I want to serve. And everybody has their own choice. It's not the game that is interesting to me. Right? To me, I'm building an ecosystem which is crazy cult-like following. My last role in Mindvalley was to figure out how to take their 3,000 most loyal customers and turn it into a 300,000 people cult. Right? And I started working with people like Jeffrey Perlman, who's the guy who took Zumba from zero to $1 billion brand. Right? So, and it's a crazy tribe-centric ecosystem. I started studying
Mm-hmm.
different tribe-centric ecosystems, like Zumba is one, ISEC that I was part of. So I'm naturally tuned to see those things. CrossFit, it's a crazy, like the Olympics, 350,000 people around the world compete in CrossFit Open, right? They're half a million now. And then there is religions, right? The most ultimate crazy like connection following. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The common pattern among all of these organizations is that you don't know who the founder is.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea, because the connection to the ecosystem is way more powerful than the person there. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean the ecosystem where the Steve Jobs or the Tony Robbins is not, it's not bad at all. They're adding massive value. It's just the game that is not interesting to me. What I'm interested in is an ecosystem where people are connected to the values of the ecosystem extremely more. And in the beginning, they'll be together. I know that I'm still driving a lot of things towards LifePlugin, right? And it's coming from my brand and so on and so forth. And I'm happy to grow with it. There's a lot of benefits and there's a lot of joy that I get from it. But what I'm more interested in is to build up an ecosystem that the values of that ecosystem are more powerful and more attractive than my name at some point. Right? Because that's cool. Because then it can also live for much longer. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then anybody who wants to add value to it, it's easy to bring them in. Anybody who's serving the same cause, come together, right? So that's the game I'm choosing to walk towards.
So interesting that you separated the games in that sense. I don't know if that's kind of like a classical way to understand marketing, but I've never heard it, and I think it's really interesting to information. Would you say that this actually relates to the idea that you recognize your soul as more valuable and more that it has more to say and more to contribute to the world than your name? Because I wanted to ask you also, how do you, because you're so honest about the marketing, the business aspect of everything. So I think that's also pretty awesome, because very oftentimes people go, no, I do this because of my heart or my values, whatever. So it's really nice to see that you're very honest with the aspect of marketing, the importance of business, and at the same time, so nicely packing it all together in a meaningful way. So how do you actually juggle with what your soul is guiding you to, with what you feel like in your heart, and a little bit what you were sharing in your story in the beginning, right? The gratitude for what you have gotten, and at the same time giving it that shape which is very successful and very logical from the perspective of the business, right? The ecosystem. So my questions are kind of two. How do you juggle with that? With the when do you listen to your intellect and follow to what the logic tells you about the business and how to make this grow and the capitalistic influence that we're all born in? So that's one question. And the second one is it just my my feeling, or is it that when you consider ecosystem to be more important, you want to kind of create something bigger than your name is? It's not like I want to grow my name. Is this kind of more ego anchored mentality and mindset which is disconnected from the soul?
Okay, let's talk about that. First, how do I juggle between the listening to the spirit or the
The
intuition
soul, the heart.
versus the intellect? I think
Mm-hmm.
as I continue to as this process continues to unfold, and the more I do it, the easier it becomes. Now, that's the first thing to remember. The first time I had to listen to my heart's desire versus my intellect, I was shaking. In fact, the craziest part is that I was standing exactly at this point in these geographical coordinates where I was shaking, because that's when I came back from a seminar with Eric Edmeans. Here you go, how things connect. And I said, okay, I want to do something. I want to bring my friends together. That's when I picked up my phone, and I said, okay, I'm going to go on Facebook Live before Facebook Live was popular. I said, okay, I'm going to, share what I have in my heart and see if somebody's interested. And I press, go live, and it goes like, back then, I don't know how it does now. It went 3, 2, 1, and then suddenly like, you're live. And then, you're live in like 3,000 people all of a sudden, and then you have to share what you have in your heart. I was shaking. I think I was visibly shaking. So don't watch that video, but it's on Facebook in 2017 from June in Barcelona. That's when I started to listen to my heart. Back then, it took 5 days of intensive seminar to say, okay, let's just give it a try. And I was still shaking. It will connect in a bit. At that time, it took massive energy. Things need to be just right. I had to have enough space for me to reflect on the massively transformational experience that I just had. And that's when I could do it. I said, okay, there's 3 minutes of courage. Let's see. I started LifePlugin with a Facebook Live, with no website, with no payment system, without any expectation that something will happen. The live just went really well. Right? So people said, yes, we are in. That's how it started. Like, wow. There was no website, no plans. I was doing really well in Mind Valley at the time. Right? So now to answer the question, how do I juggle between the two? I think it's important to recognize, and this is the point where I'm juggling between the two effortlessly right now. But when I started listening to the heart, the earliest, most successful proof that I remember, one of the earliest was this one that I just described. That was 4 years ago. And because I had one proof and that was successful, that gave me confidence for the next time I had to listen to my spirit. It made it a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. And then the third time I had to listen to that experience, it made it a little bit easier. And these success proofs, they start piling on each other. The trick here, and this is what we teach in our personal mastery journey, one of the principles is to remind yourself every single day of your success proofs. Let's say you also mentioned, oh, I have so much of this version of, oh, I'm not good enough, and not good enough for this, not good enough for that. And this is an incessant thought process. The reason why I recognize that is because it's also my strength. Like, I felt so not good enough in so many ways that makes me the learning freak that I am today. Because I don't just learn things, I make sure that I embody every single thing that I'm learning, because I felt so not good enough back then, right? So what the reason is, our brain is normally tuned towards looking at what is the negative. What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? Because we are loss aversive human beings. It's deeply embedded in our psyche. Nothing wrong with that. But there's a bug in the system, because for us to develop creative confidence or listening to our heart versus our intellect, listening to intellect is a muscle that we built all our life. Listening to our heart or spirit or soul is a muscle that we spent zero time investing in. In fact, every time we think that we are trying to listen to our heart and things fail, we remember it very strongly.
Hmm.
So one of the things is to do is we make people, our clients, write their success proofs. So let's say you're trying to change the idea of I'm not good enough to, for me in my example, public speaking, because I needed to do it, I wanted to do it, and then there were a time I did it for 7 8 years, externally really good, but internal dialogues were terrible, right? And so I stumbled upon this principle, and I started writing down all the success proofs. Every time someone would say something nice to me about it, like, hey, this was massively beautiful, I would receive the compliments and then I'll forget about them. And then the next time I'm on stage, that momentum is gone. After like half an hour, I'm forgetting everything. So I started writing those things down. And I just writing those things down one after the other, just as a gratitude. And by now, I ended up creating like an Evernote list, which has like, love and appreciation towards like public speaking. It started humble and sweet to the point it was becoming common, saying, holy shit, you absolutely changed my life, to holy shit, how is this person so underrated? All of these things I started remembering. And the more things I saw, I took a screenshot, put it in the Evernote. Right now is 5 years ago, I started this practice. Your fingers will get tired, but you will not be able to stop scrolling, right? So now my creative confidence, if I have to teach something, yeah, no problem, let's do it now, right? Because I had to train my brain to trust in that ability. And it's the same thing with trusting in the ability of our spirit, of our soul, what is our calling, and trusting that just a little bit. So the experience that I shared in 2017 was my first powerful, successful experience, where I listened to something that I didn't even know what that was at the time when I was doing it, but I did it anyway. And I was like, I remember it as if it was yesterday. I'm feeling those same emotions now because it was really powerful. Then every subsequent time that happened became easier. And so I have a list, and I would often, every month or so, remind myself or add more things to it, how the random synchronicities and things that are just lucky that I was at the right place at the right time. That list, or right place at the right time, I said the right thing at the right time. I reached out to the right person, or the right person reached out in my life just when I needed it, that you cannot explain intellectually. Absolutely not. And again, it's a list. And I would remind myself every month, every week, I have that list in front of me, right? If I switch screens, I can see that list. So that developed my confidence and faith in listening to my heart and soul, right? And as I developed that confidence in my intellect, in my teaching, in my expressions, I started sharing some of those things when I started becoming a bit more confident. And I found that it was valuable to people who are also intellectuals, but they're also looking to develop that strength with listening to their heart or their soul or their spirit or what have you, or their subconscious or superconscious, whichever vocabulary speaks to you, right?
Hmm.
So this balance comes from just having that reminder process again and again, and that's how I juggle between the two. Now there's no juggling, they're both part of me. And I'm more emotional person, so I'm more inclined towards listening to the heart and soul, with a trained ability in developing the intellect and the
Hmm.
learned capitalism. But then you
Yeah.
hire people who are complementary to you. So my business partner is the opposite, right? And that's how it should be. A co-founder is the opposite. Like, he thinks he's a very pragmatic guy, takes business courses, doesn't study personal growth as much, even though he's very tuned with it, but not to the level that I am, right? And but he's very intellectual, looking for, okay, how do we grow the business? What are the numbers that we need to look at? And then I would combine that with my dominant thinking hat, which is, hey, think about the principle. This is the essence. Is it getting expressed here, or are we cutting it short to just make short-term revenue? And that's the battle that is actually healthy, because that maintains the tension between the soul of the company and the growth of the company, survival of the company, right? So soul and survival, right? And they both need to thrive together. So there's multiple ways. A, you develop confidence in one, and B, you hire people or access resources that complement the other. So the tension between the two remains. So I don't really think about juggling it, but when I have to juggle it for LifePlugin, it is with people who are wearing complementary hats as me, whether they're
Hmm.
hired or they're advisors or in whichever shape or form.
That's so good. Thank you so much. That was so cool. When I was listening to your interview with Sonia, which was so good though, I was thinking like I'm just gonna go through who's that person. And then I stayed like the whole part and I was like, that's so nice. um, and she was saying at some point, I think it's interesting to point it out now also because I'm using that word interesting so much, like everything is interesting. Interesting. She said, she was quoting Einstein basically. She said, the intellect is our, no, the spirit is our sacred gift, and the intellect is its faithful servant, right?
Mhm.
So you said now also that it's like you are basically training your mind through the whole this part. Now you're kind of exposing the need to train yourself to either basically train and condition your brain to notice the positive stuff, to notice the good things, basically the confirmations to where you're supposed to go, rather than the opposite, right?
Mhm.
Or at the same time also to train yourself to trust the heart, to and to really kind of take a leap of faith when you had to and when you felt that push. So, and I think I also want to make a parallelism with the Vedas, because I'm very much into studying ancient wisdom, and I just absolutely love yoga and tantra. Not tantra the way they teach it in the West, because it's just like a joke, especially social media tantra teaching. um, but yeah, the philosophy behind the mind, I mean, the way they approach the mind, they see the mind so clearly as an instrument, right? It's not like the ruler, the king. Yeah, the mind is all there is. The mind is the instrument, and if the instrument doesn't work correctly, then obviously it's going to fuck up things. So, or also the instrument cannot play the player, right? I mean, it's not made to play, it's made to be played. So through everything that you just said, and correct me if I'm mistaking, the way I understand it is very much in that sense. Basically, you just explained, well, at least in my perspective, so yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, that we should train, and it's like a long process. It's not something you do once. You continually study how can you use your mind better, how, where is it that where is the information that you're receiving coming from, and how to understand also better what kind of person are you. Do you connect better with your heart, or do you connect easier with your intellect? And then get yourself the understanding that, then you can actually complement yourself, right, with having someone that reminds you of your heart connection, like you remind your coworker, I mean co-founder, and vice versa, right?
Mhm. Yeah, this is to me, it's quite the fact that you asked that question, first of all, that how do you juggle between the intellect and the spirit, tells me that you're inclined towards listening to the spirit, but the question is how, not why.
Exactly, because I'm very intellectual myself as well, or at least I feel a need that I should be. Like I feel like this strong push, I should learn, study this, that, like.
Yeah. And it's the greatest tool of all to be used. Right? But the juggling part, it's also, I think, we've all had experiences which we cannot explain. Like we cannot, like there are experiences that we have which, like, there's no other explanation than saying it was God, even if you hate the usage of the word God, right? There are experiences that we've all had, all of us. I think if you ask anyone the most random, magical, synchronistic moments that you had, yeah, we've all had them, right? Then the
Mhm.
question is, like, how do we tune into that? How do we start listening to it? Right. And there's
Mhm.
certain experiences that we have early on, and then certain experiences that are induced through a deep meditation or through yoga or through plant medicine. Psychedelics
Mhm.
are also now becoming a buzz in the community for
Mhm.
good reasons, but there is a danger to irresponsible usage of it. But it's like every single reasonable person. Now, every single person, I've only spoken to reasonable people about psychedelics, I think, but every single person that's ever spoken to about psychedelics is the first time they come back from it, it's like one of the biggest top three experiences of their life, no matter how successful,
Mhm.
no matter how big or massively, crazily adventurous life they've had. They come back from that experience with a new perspective. It's, I think, and it's hard to express other than saying a connection with a collective consciousness, a connection with the divine, right? So there are some massively powerful experiences. You can induce them through plant medicine. My mom had experienced something similar through Reiki, right? And my dad, just because of him being him, right? And I have my own versions even before I ventured into this only 5 years ago, right? So I had before that as well. So I think the inclination towards listening to the spirit, listening to the soul, what that is, how deep can we go. I think everybody doesn't have that inclination. So you also mentioned this good point, that is to understand what is my inherent, what pulls me is the spirit, because the question you ask is how do you integrate the spirit with the mind.
Yes.
And a lot of people would question why, and it may, for them it's not interesting, right? And for them they might be way more logical, and they have their place, right? They
Mm-hmm.
have a role to play in our evolution as well, right? And this is where understanding, highly intellectually understanding what my personality type is, right? People who are spiritual or who are aligned towards intuition, like Sonia, they're extremely high in openness. Like if you do
Mm.
the Big Five test by Jordan
Yeah,
Peterson,
I've done it. Yeah, I've done it. Yeah.
and I'm guessing you're also very high in
Yes.
extroversion as well, right? And then
Yeah.
there are people on the other end of the spectrum, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a good idea to identify, uh, get a snapshot of where I am now. It doesn't define us, but get a snapshot
Yes.
of all my inclination. What does it tell? What does it say about me? What are my current inclination? How can I use it to my advantage? And how can I be aware of my blind spots? Right? Because that's another thing that personality tests do. They show you your blind spots. Right? Okay, I am blind. I'm not as high in conscientiousness. I'm moderate. Right? I know people who are very low in conscientiousness and very high in extroversion and openness. Right? I'm moderate just to get the thing rolling. But when it comes to scaling things up, I think it's my blind spot. I will not
Mm-hmm.
see certain things, and they won't even be important to me. So I need to fill up that blind spot with somebody else's perspective and be humbled when somebody is sharing that perspective, even though it is conflicting with mine. Because now I'm aware this is a blind spot and it is needed for me to take LifePlugin wherever I want to take. I think it's also about knowing what are my inclinations. So not everybody is interested in uh, being inclined towards listening to their spirit. But if they are, they would listen to the interview with Sonia Shokat. She is the boss here. She, if you remember the interview, I remember that she made me go through an exercise, put me on the spot, that made us create our new product. By the way, the personal mastery journey product that I didn't want to, uh, the
Oh,
story.
yeah, the launching it. Yeah.
So I did it after her interview. She said, "Okay, what does your intuition tell you? Should you do
Now.
it online?" I said, "Well, okay," and it was telling me yes. So we decided, right? So it's also a matter of choice. Like, is this something interesting to you? Because it doesn't have to be for everyone.
Okay. What about when you talk? So how much are you short on time? Because we're now an hour in. Can I?
Yeah, I have 30 more minutes.
Okay, cool. I want to give you this last question, which we can talk on more anyway. I mean, obviously, if later develops more. But you said especially now, when you say that not everyone is interested in that, right? When I have my brother, he's super highly intellectual and and very orthodox in a way, like very, the thinking of the system which is established now, and he finds it very hard to open himself for different perspectives, especially when it comes to more subtle perspective of life, something which is hard to explain, like the spirit, soul, things like that. So, but what I do see in him is like there is certain certain tension about him because of that. It's like um, when you mention in one of your TEDx, I don't know which one was it, but you talk about how we lost, I think it's the currency of belonging. You talk about how we lost our religious and geographical anchors, right? And you talk about the benefits that religion brought to humanity in the past, to social interactions and the feelings of belonging and shared beliefs and etc. and etc. And also, I think now you mentioned about something bigger than yourself. This is, I think, also something which we lost when we lost connection to religion, and we completely kind of negated the idea of spirituality, or we also filtered it a lot. We just took certain things which fit to our values now and which support the growth of capitalism in a way. So we're filtering things and we're letting out the idea of God very easily. Like, oh God, no, no, I was the same. Like a while ago, I would be, no, I mean, God, no, I just believe in universe or, whatever, things like that. Um, and and then you say also that we're kind of, because of that loss of anchoring of religious and geographical anchors, we're kind of floating in the antisocial society and building a highly independent lifestyle, right?
Mhm.
So I think that even if not everyone is interested in that yet, I believe that it's in obviously I am biased. I'm very obviously biased because of my inclination and attractiveness towards spirituality and ancient mysticism in general. But I do think also from different people that I've been listening to, for example, the last book of Russell Brand, he talks about the importance of sacred, the idea that we lost the connection to sacred. I do think that we all will have to slowly open ourselves for more, um, just letting this idea of sacred, of devotion, of something which is bigger to ourselves, close to us, right? That we should, all of us, or at least those who can, try to bring this idea closer, who to people like my brother, for example. We should be doing it. I think that there is really a need for bringing back this sacred idea and the teachings of ancient mysticism, basically, which connect us to devotion and to or God, however you want to call it.
Okay, so the first thing that came to mind, I was recently reading this book by Jordan Peterson, just his last book, Beyond Order.
Yeah.
Did you read it yet?
No, I listen to podcasts, but I really want to read it. Yeah.
So the first rule is, it's very complex language. I think is, do not carelessly denigrate social institutions and uh, creative rebels or something, like people who are questioning those things. So social institutions, things like religion, they were our central social institution. It was a school. Religions were also the original school of philosophy, like school of life. Originals, they were designed like that, and they have a lot of value in that aspect. And I think there's also value in challenging it, being the he didn't use the word creative rebel, but creative something. But I think the essence is people who challenge it. They push the boundaries so that it actually improves the social institution in and of itself. And our religions are basically the social institution output of thousands of years of iteration by people who are challenging it, and then it gets integrated in the narrative. If we abandon the whole story, we abandon all the benefits with it, and it causes suffering, right? So in the example of your brother, if I think if every person experiences this internal distress, any kind of suffering from minor to major, I think it becomes an opening because they seek a solution. Okay, what is the alternative to it? Right? And in that moment, like the availability of uh, the practices of spiritual practices or mindfulness should be equally accessible, if not more, than medications. The problem right now is that the medication or fixing it, like this is the culture that we live in. Have a problem, fix it. Have a problem, fix it. Have a problem, fix it. And we keep on fixing the symptom rather than the root cause.
Yeah.
Right. So the first thing that comes to my mind is that when people within themselves, they feel a discomfort or they feel in pain or suffering, they actually look out for solutions. They often come down to meditation. Meditation now is becoming well accepted enough. And practicing meditation or different schools of mindfulness is actually a powerful opening into the realm of spirituality. Like it can be a good gateway drug to go into this world of practicing different spiritual practices. And then what we need to have is also a sense of respect towards these ancient spiritual traditions, while at the same time improving them or being conscious enough to not take everything blindly, not start hating homosexuals, for example. But there's a lot of truth and wisdom in Christianity outside of that, right? So be mindful of the value that it offers, and also at the same time challenge the outdated stuff that is not serving, right? So I think for people who are highly intellectual, and if they experience some suffering, what I would wish in the world is that they are targeted by ads, if they do get targeted by ads, which they do, and or in their surroundings, they are introduced with the idea of mindfulness practice, being present with whatever is coming to you, and that opens our heart and begins the connection with something bigger than ourselves. Because the confusion is with thinking that we are alone and we are separate from everybody else. If we expand this, we are alone. We're not alone. We are connected with each other. First with our family and friends, then with our city, then with our nation, then with other people, and then with the planet. And I think that just that spectrum evolves somewhere. It meets with spiritual practices, right? And the opening into understanding that, oh, I'm not. The goal is not independence, right? The goal is not independence. It is interdependence. So my job is to do my best. Like my desire is to do my best to keep on creatively sharing these ideas in a way that people who are intellectually inclined higher on, because that's how I was engineer, like 500 million Indians, right? I have an engineering mind.
Mm,
So when people who are intellectually inclined, how do they get open up to this stuff? From a logical standpoint, there's an opening, and from there it takes you further, right? To the But our culture, what I would like, the root cause is the culture. If you think about in our classrooms, let's look from our classrooms. We encourage independence,
totally.
encourage separation, right? If you ask for help, it's called cheating in
Yeah,
school.
man. So yeah, wow, what a good point.
And so this is the world that we live in, right? And it gets deeply embedded in us, in our psyche. And
Mm-hmm.
American philosophy is just on the forefront of this end of the spectrum, where they're experiencing massive challenges of just being thinking that they're separated from everyone, right? Separated from the world, right? Losing sight of our interdependent nature also causes all the problems in the nature.
Yes.
It's the losing sight that we're interdependent, right? So they just happen to be in that unfortunate space. They've created many revolutions by chasing independence. I think we went. It's in my view, we went a bit too far without acknowledging our interdependent nature. So if someone is on that spectrum, if it causes suffering, I think the opening would be to see, okay, what is the solution to it, without trying to fix the symptom, but finding the root cause. The narrative about quick fixes need to change, and we are living in a world with instant gratification. That is the thing that worries me more than opening them up to spirituality, because spirituality will find its way back into your life either way, if we can pause for a moment and step out of the trance, step
What
out
a
of the
good point. What a
right.
good point.
But the tricky part now with social media is that Matrix was a cool movie that we
It
all thought
is.
in, we all thought we were in one collective illusion. But now the reality is we are all in our different matrix. Leah, what you're seeing in your world is absolutely different and unique to you than me. So, and that's why it's also clear, that you've seen the documentary Social Dilemma.
Yeah, of course. I've seen another one which is really good. It's one independent one by Bark Profile. I can send you later. It's even better than Social Dilemma. But yeah,
But
go ahead.
it's causing this sense of like you just think that you are in your own matrix and everything that you believe is right, and no anybody who disagrees with you is the enemy, right? So that's a bigger, like it's the tail end of a long chain of events which causes that. To me, it's like constantly plugged in and constantly trying to find a quick fix for my boredom, quick fix for my attention is hungry for something, let's feed it with something, rather than just taking a pause and sitting with that, you know fidgety mind, and just sit with it. Okay, what is calling my attention? That's the practice of mindfulness. Go internal. Okay, what is it in my body that I don't want to feel? When you want to open social media or something, just few breaths and asking this question: what is it that I'm trying hard to not feel? And that creates an opening. And then you go internal. Okay, fear or boredom. How does boredom feel like? And that practice can expand into, okay, acceptance, stepping out of the trance, and then it starts to open us up into a bigger and bigger and bigger collective experience. So spirituality finds its way back if, for moments, we can take pauses from time to time.
Wow, what a good point. Um, I really like that we don't have to be talking about spirituality, but basically creating the ground, right, on which the spirituality will naturally enter, because it's a natural process. And that's something that I really believe in. I really didn't like to use the word spirituality. Actually, for a while I've been avoiding it and rather just use the words like this is a natural evolution of human. It's a natural process. So as you go on going deeper and practicing knowing yourself and how you relate with the world, it's the process of evolution that is so natural that sooner or later you basically start opening yourself for the idea of sacred, same as if you do that. This is why actually when you do the psychedelic drugs, you get that idea of something bigger, divine, right? Because it's just a shortcut, a speed up process of where you can be, and you what you can reveal to yourself if you, as you said, pause and um, explore what's happening within and slowly unveil more and more layers of what's happening. And then of course you enter into the sensations and experiences which connect you to something which is obviously not intellect, is are more subtle expressions of ourselves, which are basically just energies and our subtle bodies and etc. So yeah, I really like that. Even though, my brother does yoga,
Yeah, so
but it doesn't really help.
from
So
that perspective, maybe it's his timeline is different, right? In which
maybe, yeah, no, for sure. He's going to open, because one thing that I want is, you just mentioned Jordan Peterson in his latest book. Um, he always talks about the importance of communication, right? He says, like, yeah, sure, now these two poles are having a clash and we're experiencing the chaos who is trying to um, break down the rigidness of the system, but it's in the communication where we can make these slight tweaks. And I think that the one of the most important aspects for this communication to be successful is for us to be able to pause, right? To be really doing these pauses and exploring what's happening inside of me, like the way that you mentioned also before, the blind spot. I think that was also such a good point. For me especially, like, I've been falling into my blind spots a lot, and I was just like so blinded by the idea that my values are important, that I was unable to see that there are certain other values which also have their meaning, right, which have their place in the world, and that they can teach me. So yeah, the communication, right, is that place where these two poles can function, um, enriching to each other, can have a function that is enriching for each other. And we're really on an interesting place in time right now.
yeah,
um, there's this book by Fritjof Capra called The Turning Point. Have you heard for Fritjof Capra?
no, good.
you have to
Yes.
you have to find his books. He is just incredible thinker, and he's a physicist. Actually, he's a scientist, and he wrote these books in 70s and 80s, doing the parallelism between the modern physics and the Eastern mysticism. And then The Turning Point, and the new book, which is called The Systemic View of Life, talks
Mhm.
about this, about the transformation through which we go now, our civilization, and how the communication basically is essential for us to get that transformation right, because we are on a transformation, we're on a turning point. Like, the value system is changing, the education is changing, um, and this is going to change basically the whole lives, right, of next
Sounds good.
generations.
I'm adding it to my list, and if I'm forgetting, you have to send me the message.
I will send you, and I will ask you for which one did you say? The influencing. I really want to read that. I
Yeah,
have to open myself
it's life changing, really. Like
more for the market.
it's like once you read it, you can't unsee those messages around you all the time. It's like you read it once, and then the world around you changes. You just start looking at things. Well, maybe you need to practice those things as a marketer a bit. Then now I don't see I don't even see this conversation without those six influence principles. And I can tell you which conversations that you had or I had that would have more influence on the listeners than the ones without. It's just you can't unsee the world in a different way. It's beautiful, the book. That's
So cool.
considered the Bible of like for 30 years now. I think the book was written in 1980s or 90s.
It's incredible. These books from Fritjof Capra also, 70s, 80s. It's just like, how did these people, it's like the time that doesn't even exist for them. They just, it's so applicable to everything that's happening now. It's incredible. It's really, really incredible. Um, okay, I'm not going to take more time from you anymore. Thank you so much. It was so valuable, everything that you said, and so many moments are super powerful. So I'm really looking forward to make this in the short videos. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Leah, thank you so much too. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm really uh, also inspired to see the kind of thinking that you are bringing to podcast interviews. And you said this is your first one. I'm really
Yeah.
blown away. I think you're going to go far with this. And yeah, I'm looking. I'm setting the intention for our paths to cross soon enough in this small world. I think let's see where that would be.
I really hope so. I really hope so. I love what you guys are doing. So let's keep in touch. Let's see if our paths cross. Yeah.
For sure. Thank you so much. This was a beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Send hugs to Wendy.
Yes, I will. All right.
Bye.